Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore was the former headmaster of Hogwarts and one of the greatest wizards of all time. He died at the age of 115 years, leaving behind a long and complicated life that only a few people understood. He was born into darkness and had endured a deeply disturbing past and an even more conflicted youth. In adulthood, he wrestled with the shadows of his choices and was burdened by a guilty conscience. Then, he ultimately became a wizard the entire community would remember in good words. It is an epic story that we're going to be diving into today. Subscribe now and join us as we explore the light and dark of Dumbledore's personality. It was believed that Dumbledore was born in the year 1880 in a small and remote village, in a tiny house. He lived with his mother, Kendra, his father, Percival Dumbledore, his brother, Aberforth, and his younger sister, Ariana. Since it wasn't a wizard-centric village, there were a lot of troubling muggles living around the block. Once, Dumbledore's sister, Ariana, was out in the backyard when a group of muggles spotted her doing magic. Now, it's unclear what they did to her, but it was so traumatizing that Ariana never again built the confidence to do magic. Ultimately, she suppressed her magic to the point that she became an Obscurus. It is a type of magical parasite that forms when a witch or wizard suppresses their magical powers, either willingly or through coercion. Seeing Ariana's state, Dumbledore's father, Percival, retaliated by using magic on the Muggles. While he was understandably motivated by his desire to avenge his daughter's suffering, he never disclosed his intentions to the Ministry of Magic in fear that Ariana would be sent to St. Mungo's. As a result, he was imprisoned in Azkaban, and the whole incident was painted as a hate crime against Muggles. After Percival's sentence, Kendra took the kids and moved out of the village to a house in Godric's Hollow. The news of Percival's imprisonment had spread everywhere and followed Albus into Hogwarts. He had the same chatter around him as Harry did growing up. The difference was that Dumbledore was often painted as a criminal's child rather than a legacy of the wizarding world. Regardless, he put his nose into books and grew up to be a gifted student. Eventually, his talents overshadowed the gossip surrounding him, and he started developing ambitious plans for the future. When he was fresh out of Hogwarts, he was all set to go on a grand tour with his friend. Sadly, that is when a disaster struck at his house. In the said tragic incident, Dumbledore's sister Ariana lost control of her powers and unfortunately ended up killing Kendra, their mother. And since he was the eldest son, he had to come back to Godric's Hollow to look after his sister and brother, to his dismay. Dumbledore felt that it was a waste of his talent to come back and babysit at the house. Little did he know that it was a blessing wrapped in disguise. Soon enough, another equally talented and equally eccentric wizard, Gellert Grindelwald, came back from Durmstrang and moved to Godric's Hollow. The two met and immediately hit it off. Considering how they were both brilliant wizards with shared interests, their friendship was so deep-rooted to the point that they would send letters over to each other's houses and would use them as a channel to ramble on and on about their future plans. They both wanted to conquer the world and let the existence of magic be known to Muggles. On the darker side of things, they wanted to rule over these Muggles for the greater good. At least, that's how Dumbledore convinced himself of the oppressive plan he had in mind. They were equally obsessed with the Deathly Hallows, the Invisibility Cloak, the Resurrection Stone, and the Elder Wand. But unlike others, they didn't seek the Hallows to become the Master of Death. They planned to share the power among themselves instead. The Elder Wand would help Grindelwald build an army that would take over the Muggles. The Resurrection Stone would bring Dumbledore's parents back and in turn relieve him of his caretaking duties, and the Invisibility Cloak would allow him to hide Ariana from the world. On paper, and according to their young minds, it was the perfect plan. However, resentment had started to build beneath all that brilliance and youth. Aberforth, Dumbledore's younger brother, ended up having to leave Hogwarts after a fight broke out between him and Grindelwald. Aberforth wanted them to stop, but the two future legends saw him as someone standing in the way of their vision. The tension between them was palpable enough to turn violent, and sure enough, it finally snapped. A duel broke out between the three while Ariana stood off to the side. It's still unclear whose spell hit her, but when it was over, she was on the ground, dead. Grindelwald bolted out of the house and away from Godric's Hollow, while Dumbledore was left to deal with the death of his sister and the consequential guilt that would haunt him for years to come. If you're curious about what happened next, hit that subscribe button. Despite Dumbledore's brilliance and impeccable skills, he never continued on to pursue more ambitious positions. Even though he was offered prestigious posts at the Ministry of Magic, he refused all the requests. The incident at his house concerning Ariana was enough to tell him that he could not be trusted with power. This is also one of the potential reasons as to why Albus never exposed Grindelwald, although he knew all of the wizard's evil plans. Was he against Muggles because of his past? Maybe. But that doesn't seem like the Dumbledore you and I know. People believe it was either Dumbledore's fear of power or his loyalty to Grindelwald that forced him to turn a blind eye to all those devilish plans. In the end, he decided to join Hogwarts and stay far, far away from Grindelwald's drama. He was afraid that if he ever confronted Grindelwald, he'd either be blamed for Ariana's death or, worse, learn the truth about who actually cast the fatal spell. It was something he just did not want to relive and was actively suppressing. While we never get to know who actually killed Ariana, the mystery and guilt ate Dumbledore from the inside out. He tried to keep his mind off it by exploring different subjects to teach and eventually settled on transfiguration. But no matter how much distance he put between himself and Grindelwald, he couldn't avoid him forever. Grindelwald and his army were gaining ground, and the Dark Wizard had become more outspoken than ever. The public had already called for Dumbledore to step in, but the moment came a little later than it should have. In 1945, the two former friends and possible lovers finally faced off in one of the most legendary duels in the wizarding world to date. Dumbledore very closely won, and Grindelwald was locked away for good. From that moment on, Albus Dumbledore was no longer just a brilliant professor, he became a legend. In the end, the good fame he once craved finally caught up to him. After the epic battle and Grindelwald's defeat, all the attention came to Dumbledore. He slowly rose through the ranks and ended up as the headmaster of Hogwarts. It was during this time that an old name resurfaced, Tom Riddle. Dumbledore had met Riddle years earlier at the orphanage, and even then, something about the boy had unsettled him. This time around, the young man came to be interviewed for the position of the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. Dumbledore saw a sudden change in Voldemort's physical appearance and immediately became suspicious. The truth was that Riddle had already started experimenting with Horcruxes, but nobody knew about it at that time. Naturally, the headmaster denied him the job, and Voldemort didn't take it well. From that moment on, the position seemed cursed, and no Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher ever lasted more than a year. However, that was only a small challenge compared to the other things Voldemort had planned against the wizarding world. Soon, the Dark Wizard started gathering his army and slowly began to rise to power. As a reaction to the sudden spike in the dark arts, Dumbledore created the Order of the Phoenix to fight against the Death Eaters. Many of Voldemort's followers were either captured or killed during this time, but that barely made a dent in his ambition. He had never valued his followers much anyway. For the evil man, they were expendable tools in his relentless pursuit of power that would later become the main plot of the story. Everything changed when Professor Trelawney's prophecy reached Voldemort's ears. The seemingly immortal being was fully convinced it referred to Harry Potter, so he went after the boy and murdered his parents. However, as soon as he tried to kill Harry, the curse backfired, thanks to Lily Potter's sacrificial protective charm. Voldemort almost vanished and was saved only by the Horcruxes he had secretly created. In fact, people thought he was gone forever. No one, not even Dumbledore, fully understood what had happened that night. Voldemort disappeared, and the wizarding world celebrated his fall. No one realized at the time that the Dark Wizard would rise to power again. Still, Dumbledore, being as intuitive as ever, remained cautious and had a gut feeling that Harry was now the center of something much larger. This is when he sent Harry to the Dursleys, hoping that Petunia would take him in. The decision was pretty controversial at the time, for everyone knew that Petunia resented her sister, Lily. Yet Dumbledore stayed adamant on his decision and fully believed that these blood ties would offer Harry a deeper kind of protection. It was a gamble, but for now, it was the best option he could offer to anyone involved in the mess. During Harry's years at Hogwarts, Dumbledore did all he could to save Harry from trouble. However, it was during the Chamber of Secrets that he had truly learned of Voldemort's plan and incessantness to come after Harry. The discovery of Tom Riddle's diary gave him a glimpse into Voldemort's twisted obsession with immortality and set off a few alarm bells in Dumbledore's head. That's when Dumbledore's plan to end Voldemort for good really started taking shape. He started off by raising Harry under his protection and keeping a watchful eye on him at all times. Next, he went on a wild goose chase to learn and track down all of Voldemort's Horcruxes. Harry, of course, had no clue what Dumbledore was up to, even as his own life hung in the balance. A lot of people criticize what Dumbledore did to Harry. As Snape said, Albus raised Harry like a pig for slaughter. However, one can say that he did all of this to protect Harry from a very traumatic life. He knew the guilt and pain of carrying a secret in his heart that he could tell no one. He wanted to protect Harry from all of this distress and allow him to have a loving and hopeful life. It was only when Harry was truly ready that Albus told him everything. Well, almost everything, since one may argue that he never really told Harry all the details of how to find Horcruxes. The why here, though, is a question that's still up for debate. Fast forward to the Half-Blood Prince, and Albus had started revealing more about Voldemort's past to Harry. He told the boy about the Dark Wizard's rise to power and his twisted obsession with immortality. He believed that understanding Voldemort's history was key to defeating him, so he shared what he knew with Harry. He hoped Harry would one day be able to piece everything together and finish the job. Before Harry's 6th year at Hogwarts, Albus stumbled upon the Peveril Ring that had been sitting at the Gaunt House. He soon realized that it held the Resurrection Stone, a thing he had long cherished in his youth. He put the ring on without hesitation and ended up getting an incurable curse in return. Little did he know at the time that this curse would take his life in less than a year. Dumbledore then found another Horcrux in a cave. It was a locket left behind by Regulus Black. What neither he nor Harry knew was that the locket was a fake and was essentially just a cruel twist in their search. To actually obtain it, Dumbledore had to drink a poisonous green potion guarding the locket. Unfortunately, that only ended up making him severely weak and wounded, for absolutely no reason. When the duo finally got their hands on the supposed Horcrux, they headed back to Hogwarts only to find a bigger mess waiting for them there. Draco had come to kill Dumbledore on Voldemort's orders. He disarmed the headmaster and waited, crying, hoping for someone to save him. Dumbledore, however, had already anticipated this moment a while back. When he realized that he was dying anyway, he had requested that Snape kill him and spare Draco's soul from all that drama. Snape had agreed to the absolutely dreadful plan despite his dislike for it. He also knew the unfathomable weight of the responsibility that was essentially thrust upon him. When the moment came at the Astronomy Tower, Snape took over for Draco and swooped in to send the killing curse flying at Dumbledore. That effectively marked the end of a legacy, a movement, a wizard who was admired and respected throughout the wizarding world. What do you think about Albus Dumbledore's character? Do you think he was a grey man with his own flaws, or do you see him as a bad guy in the story? Let us know in the comments down below, and share your wildest theories about Albus. I'd love to hear them all. And as always, stay curious, stay magical, and don't forget to subscribe for more Wizarding World deep dives. I'll catch you next time.